My name is Mike Gonzales, and I served in the United States Army. I grew up with a single parent. My father was in and out of prison. He was in gangs all my life. I saw my father on drugs. I saw my father going through things that a child should never go through. Our lights were constantly being shut off because we couldn't afford it. Water was being shut off because we couldn't afford it. So I made a decision early on in my life that perhaps I can make a difference. My way out of the inner city was to join the Army. When I came back from the war zone, I couldn't believe what was happening in my life. I began to experience things that weren't normal in my life. I began to see things. I began to hear things. I began to look underneath every bed, behind every door, behind every closet. I had to sleep with the light on for 2 years because I was frightened. I wasn't the only one. And throughout the entire global war on terrorism, PTSD has continued to engulf not only myself, but many other veterans. There's a statistic that says that there's approximately 22 veterans a day who are possibly or attempting or have been successful in committing suicide because of their PTSD. And I remember asking myself, what's wrong with you, Mike? What's wrong with you? But I just couldn't snap out of it. I made that decision after a long period of time to seek help through the military physicians, through pastors, through leaders, in which they gladly accepted me and began the healing process in my life. My wife and I, we do quite a bit of volunteer work. It's good work. On November the 5th of 2017, just down the road, 3 miles from my house, there was a horrifying act of violence where an agitated man would come to a church called the First Baptist Church in Sutherland Springs, Texas, just 3 miles from our home. And he would kill 26 people and wound many others. That evening, my wife and I and a team of us decided to do the very first vigil that went international. There was a statement that was made, that we made. Here in the heart of Texas, in Sutherland Springs, Texas, in the midst of violence, in the midst of darkness, I propose here, and there was about over 150 people who had gathered with candlelights, that in the midst of darkness, that we be the light that God called us to be. Now, I had been attending school for 28 years because I could only take one semester at a time while in the service, but I could never achieve that degree. I had never heard of the Centennials of Freedom until one day, one of my neighbors, whose name is Willie Martinez, presented to me the idea of this organization, of this great and phenomenal organization called the Centennials of Freedom. So I have to tell you that when I pursued my education at Texas Lutheran University, my very first semester I was challenged, taking a full load. It was excruciating. School's not meant to be simple. You gotta go through something to get something. One particular day I was engulfed with studying for a test, a paper, lecturing, presentations, and I just wasn't sure how I was going to accomplish that. As I exited the library to be alone, to catch some air, I caught myself in the moment of emotional distress. At that time, my phone rang. I noticed that the phone call was from California. And so I decided to, in the midst of my emotional distress, I answered my phone call. And it was Carol Prell. And Carol would say, Mike, how are you? And it was at that moment that I was able to let out my emotional distress. And Carol was so wonderful to just listen to me, to hear me out. And by the end of that conversation, the Centennial of Freedom spectacular woman would lift me up and help me and say, everything is gonna be okay. Everything is gonna be all right. Don't quit. Don't quit. And I just want to thank Carol Pearl and the Centennials of Freedom for believing in me, that because of people like her, people like Mike Conklin and the entire team, I have been able to achieve my dream. I graduated on May 9th of 2018, just a few weeks ago. That was a milestone. I'm the first one in our family to graduate college. With that, I'm able to encourage my family. My family seems to be extremely proud of where we're at now. And so they're doing a lot better. My father, who was that once drug addict, gangbanger, going in and out of prison, is no longer that person. My father today is a man of God and of honor, and probably my biggest fan. And so my family on that side, and growing up with my family as a young boy, today is bigger and stronger than ever before.